Today's episode of the Influencer Empires podcast is brought to you by the Empire Program with White Label Suite, powering our influencers and building their empires. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us on the show. Today, we have a bona fide expert, somebody who has cut his teeth in direct marketing for the last 4 decades. He's an OG when it comes to creating lists online, when building influence in amongst his followers. He is followed by thousands of people. He is the best-selling author of the book Over Deliver, which is available on Amazon with hundreds of 5-star reviews, and people saying that it is the #1 entrepreneur's manual. Something to really take into account. He now runs the Titans of Marketing, an invitation-only group, which has got over 250 of the world's best entrepreneurs as members. He is an incredible leader in the copy space and somebody who is forging the path when it comes to driving your business as an entrepreneur. He is none other than Brian Kurtz. Brian, thank you so much for joining us on the show.
Well, that is quite an introduction. I don't know if I can live up to all of that, but I'm really pleased to be here. I met your partner Johan and told me about this podcast that you're doing, and I love what you guys are doing. I mean, 40 years, people might be saying, "Oh, this guy's an old fogey," which I am. I've been doing this direct marketing thing for 44 years, and I cut my teeth in direct mail, and I did catch on to this internet thing and email marketing and social media marketing. So I'm no Luddite, and I'm not someone to dismiss as the old fogey, but I am an old fogey. And so the way I justify my existence is to say, look, I'll be, being 67 years old says it could be 67 years of 1 year's experience, or it could be 67 years of cumulative experience. And I would like to think that I've done the latter. And the way I've done the latter is to hang out with people like you. And I'm bringing it back to you because when I get an opportunity to be on a podcast like this, or someone in my mastermind, my Titans Accelerator mastermind with 250 members, as you mentioned, I want to learn from them. I mean, they want me to teach them. And, the idea of, teaching being a one-way street is just nuts. And it's never been that way for me. So I'm a lifelong learner. When a lot of the people I grew up with in direct mail in the 1980s, a lot of them gave up. I mean, some of them died since then because it's been a long time. But
which is a surefire failure recipe, right?
Exactly. But some of them just died figuratively because or emotionally because they saw this internet thing coming and they got scared. They said, I don't know this, it's unknown. I was in that boat. So what did I do? I looked at it. This is early. I mean, I was an early adopter. Not that I was an expert at all. I was an expert in direct mail. I was an expert in copy. I was an expert in list building, all of those things, but in the terrestrial world, in the offline world. And when the internet came about, it was like, this is the ultimate direct response medium. It's like, and it's really direct and it's immediate and the feedback you'll get is immediate. And all of a sudden I said, I gotta be a sponge. I gotta learn it. And look, there were a lot of imposters then, as there are now. A lot of people claiming they're the be all end all with everything. So I think I'm a good vetting. I'm good at vetting people. I have a good bullshit antenna, so I kind of know if someone is full of shit. And not always. I get snowed a lot too, like anybody else. But because I just go to the experts, and I learned that at my original company, Boardroom, which we always had experts in our marketing that we work with, but experts in our public, we publish newsletters and books that were interviews with experts. And the idea of experts, it's easy to say, tougher to deliver on, because you need to have bullshit antenna. You need to know who the experts are, and they have to be vetted by people who you respect and who are also experts. So it's an expert circle, as it were. And I think I've run my life that way for my entire business career, and it's paid off. Not that, I'm not, I know this is about influencers. We're going to talk about becoming an influencer, and that everybody wants to grow up and be an influencer now. I never thought about being an influencer. I did want to influence people. I did want to share my what I knew with people and let them share back with me. But that's influence, man. I mean, that's the
It's
ultimate influence, you know?
it's
So I think,
definitely influence.
yeah. So
It's the
anyway, that was a quick preamble just based on your introduction.
no, I love
And
it. Thank you. I
I
appreciate
jumped
it.
into it. Yeah.
Diving in, I always say I've got a list of questions, when we're running the podcast. But the worst thing I can do is refer to them because I much prefer to just understand from what you're saying. So there was a couple of things there that you said. Number one was you decided to become a sponge. And then the other thing was that you're a lifelong learner. Looking at where you're at right now, Brian, and thinking about what's happening, what's next, what you've worked on, what's hit, what's missed, what do you wish you knew when you got started?
Ooh. Um, you know, I when I s- well, if I knew AI was coming, I would have been a genius in 1985, right? If I knew email was coming, anything that's futuristic or technology based, or not futuristic, but just technology based, anything. I mean, the amount of progress we've made in marketing since I started, it's the difference between a horse and buggy and, a jet plane or whatever, or a rocket ship. So I think I probably could have anticipated the pace of change more,
Mm,
because even I was not fast to the trigger, compared to some people, but I was faster than most because, as I said, most of the people I grew up with in the direct mail world, they thought it would never end. I saw it ending. I mean, that I did. I did have that much foresight, but I don't think that I realized that, speed of implementation is important. I didn't understand that as much because, you grow up doing direct mail, which is painful in a way when you think about it. It's like chapter 3 of Over Deliver is titled "How Paying Postage Made Me a Better Marketer," and it's not because I want people to do direct mail. It's because the discipline that it takes to spend the kind of money on printing and postage and putting stuff in the mail, physical mail, takes a certain level of marketing sense, but it also can slow you down so
mm,
that and I'm trying to get to an answer to your question because it's difficult, but I do think that it was probably not understanding that while I wanted the discipline, I wanted to create discipline in all of my online marketing that I've done my entire career. I probably could have been faster on the trigger on some stuff. Like when I started seeing online courses come about and I had an idea for a course, I didn't jump on, and I had a good idea. I was still at boardroom at the time, and there was a course we were coming up with for retirees. And man, I just remember that one in particular. I could have jumped on that and it would have been fantastic. So, and I didn't, and it never happened. And then I left boardroom, whatever. Now, I don't have regrets about that, but that's probably, seated in where I was. Another thing was that not understanding early on the real relationship between list, audience, offer, and creative. And when I found the 40/40/20 rule, which is that, the success of any marketing campaign depends 40% on the list, 40% on the offer, and 20% on the creative and the messaging, that doesn't mean the creative is half as important. It just means the creative is the least important until it's not. And what I mean by that is that the list, and I was in the right place because I was a list guy early on. I did list segmentation. I was all into the audience. Everything was about the audience. And anybody who wants to be an influencer, it's about audience, man. It's not
yeah.
about your content first. It's about are you talking to the right audience? And what I did was in my book Over Deliver, I changed the 40/40/20 rule to the 41/39/20 rule. And why I did that is that I wanted to emphasize that 41%, the list, is the most important thing. Knowing who your audience is, knowing who you need to reach, what are their pains, what are their pleasures, what is going on in their minds. Gene Schwartz, the author of Breakthrough Advertising, which I have the exclusive rights to, it's a book that was written in 1966, talks about this in detail. And that's why I love the book so much. And that's why I do a Breakthrough Advertising boot camp. And I'm just obsessed with audience and list. Now, the interesting thing, why I said the creative is the least important until it's not, is that every great uh, promotion that I did that had the biggest lifts was because of the creative. But it was because of world-class creative that was going to the best list with the best offer. And I proved it time and again. If you have the perfect list and you have a mediocre offer and a mediocre sales letter or creative, you'll make some sales. You'll make some money. Now, making money is not the only criteria. You want to have lifetime value. You want to have recurring customers. You want to have people coming back to you time and again. Influencers? Absolutely. You don't want people coming to you. You don't want to be a one-trick pony. You don't want to be a one-hit wonder. You want to have people coming back and back and back. So the opposite, so I said the best creative, the best creative to an audience that's not so the one I mentioned was that if you have the best list with a mediocre offer and mediocre creative, that means that you'll make some sales. The opposite is not true. If you have the best creative and a lousy offer and a lousy list, you're going to make zero. I haven't proven it because I was always list first, and that's why I emphasize it so much in my book, and why I
Mhm.
emphasize it when I'm on a podcast or I talk about, especially the younger marketers who don't get that. They think it's all about content creation. Content creation is very important. I'm not saying it's not, but content for the sake of content with no audience, you're like, you're twisting in the wind. I
Yeah,
mean,
right.
that's a broad way to look at it, but
You're
yeah,
not able
yeah.
to share it with anyone. So there's three things there. You mentioned AI. You wish you'd been able to look at AI, pull the trigger faster, and understand the principles of the 41, 39, 20 rule faster. That would have made a difference to you. So knowing or
Well, I
thinking
would I
about
would
those,
have implemented more faster probably. I still implement it over time, so I don't
sure.
have big regrets about those things. But yeah, I mean, I would have been a success. Let's put it that way. And
So
now I'm a failure.
how's that shaping your decisions today, Brian? Like knowing, again, thinking about those lessons learned, implement online AI, all of the stuff, the list. What are you doing now that those
Yeah,
lessons are being reflected in?
great question, and it actually ties into what you told me before you turn the recording on, because you said that if you had one thing that you wanted to do, it would be podcasting, and then
Yeah.
you rattled off all these amazing people that you've interviewed, the NASA
Mm,
guy, it's like you never had that opportunity. Well, in marketing, I've had that opportunity.
yeah.
And so I just doubled down on that. So my masterminds, and I had a live mastermind, I have a virtual mastermind, um, and my masterminds, the way I would describe them is that I'm looking for all the watts I can find. I'm looking for all the watts I can find. What's a watt? What's a watt? A watt would be marketing on Amazon. A watt would be Facebook. A watt would be direct mail. A watt would be Google AdWords. A watt can be anything. A watt could be a billboard. A watt could be, the back of yogurt lids, if you want to test that, which I did, and it was only a good idea at the time. But the idea of everything is testable and everything out there, and you need to have I mentioned experts before. So that's how I've accelerated because I don't I don't know that. I mean, I know a lot because I said I have 44 years of cumulative experience working with the best of the best, learning all the way. But man, I had somebody present on my mastermind at my mastermind last week, and he just created this incredible personal chat GPT mirror image of himself,
Mm,
and he demoed it for the group. We had 80 people on the call. He demoed it, and it was like blowing me away. It was like I was like a kid in a candy store. So I guess the way that I know that I'm implementing and I'm moving forward, because I don't have to do anything. I mean, I don't have a business that requires me to go on YouTube and get 3 million, views. My business doesn't require that. I could do that, but I don't. I just blog to, 20,000 people every week, and I get 70% open rates and a lot of engagement. That turns me on, and that's my life.
yeah.
But I think that but you just extrapolate that. How do you get the 3 million followers? It's because your content is so compelling. In fact, I just was on a call with one of my masterminds that I pay to be in, and the guy who was the head of guest speaker, and this guy's going to speak at my mastermind too. I'll throw out his name because he's awesome. His name is Evan Carmichael,
Oh, I've
and
spoken
he
to
is
him. Yeah. He was one of my
yeah, he is
interviewees.
like talk about influencer. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
he's like Mr. Beast without being Mr. Beast in a way.
Right.
And so his YouTube expertise, it's so profound in its simplicity.
Mm.
It's like he was just talking to this group of high-end marketers and just talking about developing content and knowing your audience. It was like, wow, I've heard this before. But knowing that he's done it, I want him. Like that's why I want him to come to my mastermind. So he's a
Yeah.
watt. He's the watt of YouTube. And
Yeah.
so and he's coming. He's coming in a few weeks. So I'm just I mean, it's a long-winded answer, but I think I answered your question pretty well, which
Yeah.
is you must find and you got to have the bullshit antenna up because people will claim, like anybody who's ever said to me, I can I can be your social media agency for any social media, any kind of social media. I run away, run away. Not because I don't think they're competent or that they know a lot of stuff, because the thing is, you know, specialization beats generalists every day of the week. And I want specialists in everything that I do. And I learned that really early on in direct mail. So in the 80s, I often say that advertising opportunities were finite. You had direct mail, you had TV, you had radio, you had, print publication, advertising, then you had stuff like billboards and just, terrestrial advertising. Now, advertising opportunities are infinite. Nobody can be an expert in everything. Whereas I think in the 80s, it was hard too. But what I decided early on, and this was a lesson that I've taken and why how I apply it today is this going to the experts, going to specialists, because there were direct marketing agencies, even in the 1980s, who said one-stop shopping. I'll do your media buying, I'll do your copywriting and your creative. And there was never an agency that I wouldn't work with an agency if you paid me because you paid me and I lose all my money. I lose the money that you paid me. And I'll use a good example, copywriters. Copywriting is not a commodity. Copywriting is a specialized skill that if you do it well and you're an A-list copywriter, if you're working in an agency, you're generally not that good. I'm not putting down anybody, any copywriter who works in an agency. It's a good job. You can get a lot of work. You can make a good salary. But the A-list copywriters could make millions in royalties and the kinds of money, and we paid them because I wasn't going to go to an agency. So I had my list brokers who could give me my list work. I had copywriters who were the best of the best, who I paid top dollar for, and they were worth every penny. And so the idea of one-stop shopping was a lesson I learned early on. And today that's on steroids because we had so little media compared to today. Everything is a medium today, right? So that plus that everything is a watt to me has really, really been the key for my personal education, the education of the people in my masterminds, because I'm not going to be able to teach them about AdWords better than Perry Marshall can. I'm not going to be able to teach them about YouTube better than Evan Carmichael can. I'm not going to be able to teach them about Amazon than I don't know if you know Dylan Frost, but he's an expert on selling on Amazon and webinars. I can't teach you webinars like Dylan Frost can. I can't teach you product launch formula or launching online like Jeff Walker can. So I can't teach you quiz funnels like Ryan Levesque can. I've had them all at my masterminds. They're
Mm.
all friends. I have relationships with all of them. Not bragging. It's not bragging if you know it and did it. But I'm not talk about being a sponge. I bring them in, and I'm as much a student as everybody in my group.
I
So
love it.
that I think that's the key. I hope I answered that question. I didn't want to go
Mm.
too roundabout, but the idea of the Watts is really the way to do, and experts and specialization. I think it's
Yeah,
all wrapped up in that, and it's
I
worked
love
for
it.
me.
I love it, and I love also like one of the things that you're famous for is empowering the long game of entrepreneurialism, and I'd like to dive into that a little bit more. So we're talking about bringing in experts to learn from in those different environments. Obviously, masterminds are a massive part of your life these days, and developing that entrepreneurial spirit in the long game. Let's dive into that a little bit. So I want to start with the long game because that's something that you're famous for quoting. It's on the front of the book. Developing that in the long game. So tell me about your thoughts there in terms of building that list, that audience, that following, and treating it like that long-term asset.
It started very humbly, but early, because the business I was in 1982 was subscriptions. We were
Mm,
selling subscriptions to a print newsletter called Bottom Line Personal, the largest general consumer print newsletter in the country. It became that over time, not in 82. But, in the 90s, we had 1 million subscribers at one point. Print. I mean, sending out a
a
million
million paying subscribers, guys, by the way.
million paid subscribers. And I remember it was sometimes, you look at your life in moments, right? And there was a moment where I realized, well, the long game is multifaceted, but in terms of business and numbers, I'll do that one first, and then I'll
Mm,
do it in terms of people. But in terms of business and numbers, it was all about renewals
yeah.
for me. So
Hmm.
I remember sitting in the office with Marty Edelston, who was the founder of Boardroom, my ultimate mentor, made me a partner in the business after 10 years. So I was an owner in the company after 10 years. But I remember, after I've been there for 10 years and we were sitting in his office and we're looking at the spreadsheet of the P&L for the company, profit and loss for the company. And we're looking at like all the new subscribers coming in and all the new, we sold books too, all the new book buyers and all the new business. And basically all of that was, losing money on in the short term. And then we looked at the line where it said renewals and continuity. And it dwarfed, the number dwarfed anything else. And Marty looked at me very, very, he had a great way about him. He said, Brian, we're in the business of bottom line personal renewals. And that hit me. That was a moment in time,
Mm.
probably, I don't know, maybe 1990. I mean, that's a long time ago. And it stays with me today because it's it's about the ongoing relationship. It's no one hit wonders. I said that before. We don't want to just look at cold traffic. That's the big phrase today. I believe in getting new customers. I'm not against it because you have to get a long time customer, you have to get them first, right? So you still have to get new customers. But the sexy part of marketing, which a lot of the online marketers seem to sell more, is the idea that, selling to cold traffic, selling to people that don't know you and they don't really um um you know nothing about them, they know nothing about you, and you're going to try to sell them something. Well, you have to do that at some point, at least when you're getting started. But I did an 8-minute video in one of my blogs, and it was all about going inside before you go outside. And it was a very simple concept. The idea of lifetime value and getting more. Jay Abraham, who's my ultimate mentor, wrote the forward for my book, one of my mentors, wrote the forward for my book, has a book himself that's called Getting Everything You Can Out of All You've Got. And so when I used to go to, and I had him in my head all the time, when I used to go to visit clients after I left Boardroom and I started my own business, I took a couple of consulting clients on. I don't do that anymore, but I used to go to the company. And the first thing I would do is I'd say to them, we need to assess your assets. And what I meant by that is that let's not talk about creating the ultimate sales letter and going out to the outside and sell, sell, sell and cold traffic. What do you have? What do you have? What kind of content do you have? What lists do you have? What offers have you made in the past that worked and didn't work? So you do an inventory, an asset inventory, and that's where you start because the gold is in the people that know, like, and trust you. If you have anybody who knows, likes, and trusts you, go to them first. I mean, it sounds so obvious, but it's not how a lot of people, approach marketing. And that's playing a long game. The other part of playing a long game in terms of people is the idea that, I talk about the concept in my book of relationship capital, which I got from Jay Abraham. And relationship capital is not your personal list. It's not your 5,000 Facebook friends. It's the people that you farm relationships with over time, And that's the long game too. Like when I said I can get all these people to come to my mastermind and speak, it's not because I met them last week. It's not because someone introduced me to them. It's because I have a 15, 20-year relationship with them. And it went deep. I did stuff for them, not with any intention of reciprocity or return. I just that's Robert Cialdini, the principle of reciprocity, which I keep right here on my desk. And it says reciprocity. It's the first principle of ethical influence. Talk about influence. Everybody should read Influence by Robert Cialdini, who wants to be an influencer. But the first is reciprocation. Be the first to give service. Be the first to give information. Be the first to give concessions. And what that means is that you need to give it. Don't expect a return, 100-0, no 50-50, no meeting me halfway. And I talk about this in Over Deliver a lot. And you know what happens? Stuff comes back to you
Yeah.
magically.
Yeah.
But the idea, and I have another blog post I wrote I said never make an ask from nowhere. And whenever I'm in a situation like let's say sometimes I have to go to somebody. Let's say if I when actually Johan was a good example. He was introduced to me by somebody. I didn't know who he was. The guy who introduced me to him, I have a deep relationship with. And so going and he wanted me to meet Johan. He said he's awesome. You should get him to speak to your mastermind, and he is coming to speak soon. And but when I approached him, you have to approach them humbly. You have
Mm.
to go to them and say, this might be an ask from nowhere. I don't have a relationship with you. My buddy Bob says you are the guy to talk to when it comes to AI. And I would love for you, and based on that recommendation alone, I want you to come speak. And I had a Zoom call with him, got to know him a little bit. He's your partner, so I think you like him too.
Yeah,
And
he's not a bad guy. Yeah.
yeah, no, I mean, he has an infectious personality. He really does.
Yeah, no.
So I said, I feel this is a bold request. He didn't think it was a bold request. And the interesting thing was, I went in, I said, you don't know me. I don't assume people know who I am. That's being a good influencer too. Because then he said to me, Brian, I've read your book. I know who you are. I followed you. I know you published Breakthrough Advertising by Gene Schwartz. I know you work with Gene Schwartz. So now, okay, now he knows who I am. He probably trusts me because I've been in the business for 40 years, but he has to like me too. And to do that takes time. It's
Mm.
about time. It's you know, all of your question was long game.
Mm.
This is the long game. And so you don't have to know somebody for 40 years to ask them for a favor. That's not what I'm saying. But you need to always be there for them. It's a cumulative relationship. I have a quote in Over Deliver. It leads off one of the chapters. It says, not everything in business and life is a revenue event, but everything's a relationship event. And
Right.
I'm not the first one that said that or believes that. As I said, I haven't invented anything. But if you can run your business on that base level and
Yeah.
everything else comes off of that, you're going to be playing a long game because the other thing was in chapter 10, the last chapter of the book, the title is Playing the Long Game. And my quote for that chapter, I lead off every chapter with a quote, and that quote is a short one from Marty Edelston, which is life is long. Everybody says life is short. And Marty used to say, life is long. It's the only one you got. You got to play it that way. And I just love that expression. Very few people run around talking about life is long. They say life is short. I got to make hay while the sun shines. I gotta, in the show Hamilton, why does he write like he's running out of time? He was running out of time because Alexander Hamilton got in a duel with Aaron Burr and died at, I don't know, 29 or something. But you don't have to write like you're running out of time. You don't have to, you shouldn't be complacent, which I already talked about as one of the regrets that I have in my career. If it's a regret, it just, I would have done more things faster. Um, but time is important. Relationships are not immediate. Like I have so many people that think they're my best friend. I don't know. I don't hardly know them.
Wow.
Um, and if they call me a best friend, I better be their best friend. If I call them one of my best friends, I better mean it. It better have some bulk to it. And
Yeah.
it doesn't happen overnight. I mean, I know this sounds kind of obvious, But to me, in terms of people, that's the long game. In terms of business, it's about renewals, it's about continuity, it's about repeat business, it's about,
Yeah.
having customers for life. Oh, even if lifetime value is 5 years, it's better than one. And
Right.
so and then also staying within as opposed to going to the outside, getting everything you can out of all you've got. These are all the themes that I live by to, basically play a long game.
Yeah, definitely. I've found the lifetime value, as a software guy myself, getting that residual income coming through is just something unbelievable. But the
It,
relationship
it's
is more
everything.
important than the money. Keeping that relationship on an even keel that allows the relationship to survive 3, 5, 10 years, even if there's a financial transaction behind it. So that
You know,
brings me
there,
to the
there's a
mastermind.
there's a
Yeah.
great um, framework that I got from Dan Sullivan from Strategic Coach, who's the top entrepreneur coach in the world. And it's the 5 ways we get paid, and the fifth is cash.
Wow.
It's
Wow.
powerful.
That's really
Um,
cool. I
yeah,
haven't heard
and
that
one of them
before.
is referrals. One of them is, um, you know, um, I always forget them. I live them. I don't need them. But it's like, you
Yeah.
appreciate as well. So all the things, you're getting paid,
In so
every
many
day.
different ways, and cash is
And
the
so many
last
different
one.
things. Yeah.
That's the truth. And I think like as we're now talking about influencers and growing brands and that kind of stuff in record time, that message is something that's really important as well. It's not just about what you're doing today. It's not just about that prank on that video, or it's not just about something. It's about playing that long game that allows you to be in that space
Yeah.
for a very long time. So that brings me to the mastermind. I'm fascinated by the concept that your life now, project wise, revolves around the mastermind, the Titans of Marketing, and getting in the room with those incredible people. And we said before, you own the room, you create the room. You've created the room of 250 and growing of the best entrepreneurs on the planet. How does that impact your life? Tell me about the mastermind. Tell me about putting it together. Tell me about how that those relationships are working with your daily life.
Yeah. So I one of the other regret, I just sort of another regret, and I'll lead into the mastermind thing. It was that when at boardroom, there was a line that one of my copywriters once said. He said, Brian, you at boardroom, you probably sold 1.5 billion worth of product, $39 at a time.
Mm.
Freaking hard. I'm not proud of that. And the reason I'm not
I
proud of
think
it.
you should be. That's a billion. I think you should be. But carrying on.
No, the reason I'm not proud of it is that I could have gotten to 1 billion a lot faster if I had ascension programs, if I had
Right.
higher
Right.
products. I mean,
Okay.
we were
You took a
like,
lot of micro steps. It could have been a few giant leaps into.
exactly. We,
Got
we
it.
were basically stupid in a lot of ways. I mean, we were successful, but we were stupid because we didn't have an ascension program. So when I left boardroom, because I had 34 years of developing my relationship capital, of the relationships that I had developed, I started a mastermind. It, but I did a descension model. It just
Mm.
shows you the power of relationships because most people start a mastermind, they start one at, $197 online and they work their way up. I started with a $25,000 a year mastermind
Wow.
and I got 30 companies into it eventually. Started
Yeah.
with 23, but do the math. That's a $600,000 business like that
Wow.
and good margins too. So I
Yeah.
wasn't, but that's the economics of it. But the
Mm.
beauty of it was that, I was able to create, as you said, create the room. This was a live in-person mastermind, 3 meetings a year with all the best speakers. Because again, the 34 years, I realized I could bring the best people in. I could not
Yeah.
only have the best members, I could have the best speakers. And the members became speakers in the group. Everybody shared what they were doing. So the room was like an amazing room of 30 of the top entrepreneurs. And it was so satisfying because every
Mm.
one of those 30 has an audience of 10,000, 100,000, a million. And so I felt like, so you talk about how it made me feel. It
Mm.
wasn't just about me, but it was so satisfying that I was bringing in all this education, all of this information. They say you go to a mastermind for the information and stay for the inspiration. And
Yeah.
I think I did that. because they came in and we shared, and 1 + 1 = 3, and everybody was hugging in and hugging when they came in and hugging when they left. And that was the most, actually, that might be the most satisfying thing, that everybody came to these meetings. I had an 80% renewal rate, 80, year to year, and for 7 or 8 years. And the thing I wanted for it was that I wanted people to come into the room giving each other hugs and leave at the end of the meeting giving each other hugs. And I
Wow.
achieved that after the first meeting. And I realized this was what, not that what I was meant to do, I don't like to look at it that way, but it was something just so powerful for me. So then what happened was COVID came. There was this thing called COVID, and I lost a few members, and I was losing my desire. I did a couple of the meetings virtually, and they were great. I even got better speakers because I got speakers who didn't want to travel, and I got them on screen. So I mean, I had some of the most. I had Russell Brunson, I had Ryan Dice, I had amazing speakers,
Mm.
and so I said, instead of going to 30 companies with their tentacles, why don't I go directly to a bigger group and do it as a virtual mastermind? Interestingly, I thought of that idea before the pandemic. So I sometimes like to say that I predicted the pandemic because I did the virtual mastermind on Zoom, which is the one you were referring to,
Yeah.
250. It's called Titans Accelerator. And that one is well, I went from 25,000 to 2,000. It's only
Yeah.
$2,000 a year. It's very
De-escalation.
inexpensive. Yeah,
Yeah.
descension program, not ascension.
Mm.
And so I I have 250 members. It could be bigger too if I wanted to work at it more. I'm not going, for building it that big, but I can if I want to.
Mm.
And the satisfaction there is that I'm actually helping more people directly. When I had the 30 big companies, I was helping them with their audiences more. I'm much more hands-on with the 250 at a lower price, which is ironic, right? I'm spending less time and effort with the 30 making 600,000 or $700,000, and with the 250 at $400,000, they're needier. They sometimes drive me crazy with their questions or whatever, but equal satisfaction. I mean, I think your question was a good one. It's like, how do I feel and how do I get satisfaction? I get satisfaction when someone says, you know, you told me something. Actually, this is the best. When someone, I wrote about it recently in a blog, someone tells me, not that I gave them the deep, dark secret that they never heard before, because I don't have those. But if they told me that I explained something that was not my invention, but that I explained it in a way that it got to them and they understood it finally, that's as satisfying as it gets for me. Because, basically by being the messenger for something that is game changing for them, that's what jazzes me the most.
Yeah. I've read that from a teacher's point of view that nobody knows the founder of mathematics, but they'll always remember the teacher that made it clear for them.
Exactly, exactly. I haven't invented that either. I know that, but it's but that's the thing that really drives me, I think,
Amazing.
especially with
So,
complicated marketing stuff that people can't get to because they can't get to the experts,
yep.
and I can get to the experts. So that's one of my. I mean, basically, I have a golden ticket into a lot of rooms just because I've been around for a long time. I hate to
Mm.
say it that way. I
You've
don't get to
you've
finish it.
created that though. Like, I mean, deliberately, you've built that golden ticket piece by piece to allow that to happen by playing the long game, by creating those relationships, which is amazing. So, what's
Thank
a day in the life of Brian Kurtz look like these days?
Every day is a little different. But one thing that I do is I map out my week, um, where I have no calls or meetings on Mondays. I have no calls or meetings on Wednesday mornings, and I have no calls or meetings on Fridays.
Hmm.
And so by starting there, I block, and this is a Dan Kennedy thing in terms of time management, but I block time for myself and for the stuff that I really love to do. Not that the meetings and the calls and the podcasts, they're fun too. I'm having a good time today. I hope you are too. And I
Me
hope
too,
you are.
absolutely.
Um, but by leaving Monday, and plus some of it is to make sure that I get to the gym, um, and get a, so that's Monday and Wednesday. Friday is my writing day.
Mm.
I dedicate Friday to writing. I do a blog, but if I want to write some other stuff, or I want to do an email series for, selling the Breakthrough Advertising Boot Camp or something like that. So that sort of starts my week. But then Tuesdays, which we're doing this on a Tuesday. That's why, because Tuesdays, Wednesday afternoons, and Thursdays are like, they're not they're not 100% work, but because again, my work's my play for the most part, but it's the stuff that, is interaction with others. It's making sure I'm responding to all my emails. Um, it's it's all about connection. Like in chapter 10, the chapter 10 of my book where I said, playing the long game, I started off with life is long, and
Mm.
then the first sentence is I hate the word networking.
Mm.
And I was known as like this king mixer, and when I was in my 20s and 30s, I was like in direct mail, the direct mail world and the list world, I was like the guy who knew everybody. And I hate that because yeah, and in fact there was a trade magazine that did an article 30 under 30. So it was like 30 people to watch who are under 30 years old, and they did a profile of me, and the headline was strategic schmoozer. And schmoozer, and those, people don't know what a schmoozer is. It's like someone who's like always, cuddling up to people and shaking everybody's hand and patting them on the back, and like just being the person with 5,000 Facebook friends and none of
And those,
them, and no real friends.
right.
um and so it was another big moment in time. I said, I don't want to be a strategic schmoozer. If I'm seen like that, that sucks. And I wasn't like that, but it was perceived by this guy who wrote the article about me. So that's when I committed to relationship capital, going deep with people, all of that. And that's what really drove me to the things that I do today, which are not best in time management. That I respond to every email from my blog post, not right away, but I always try to respond to everybody. I try to give everybody, you know, the grace and the respect. If
Mm.
they abuse it, I have to tell them too much. But generally, I like to be, because you can talk the game of relationships. You gotta deliver on it. So basically what that thing is, I hate networking led to I contribute to connect.
Nice.
That's my life. That's my
Yeah.
life. I
Is that what
contribute
lights you
for,
up now? Like, is that your daily mantra? I contribute to connect.
yes, yes. One
That's
of
what
many.
you're driving. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But contribute to connect is critical for me.
Mm. What do you see happening from here on in, man? Like you've got what some would say is a beautiful ideal life. And I was listening to somebody yesterday, Dan Martell, talking about building a life that you don't ever want to retire from. It's why would you want to retire from something that's just so fun? What's coming up for you that's lighting you up? What's next? What's the things that's keeping you driven and focused?
Yeah, it's funny. Dan Martell, I saw him speak at an event, and he's amazing, and he's a great software developer, and he's probably made $1 billion. If he's not a billionaire, he's close, probably.
Yeah.
And he basically, one of the Joe Polish interviewed him at one of the mastermind meetings, and he talked about, like, ignore email was one of his things.
Mm.
And I said to myself, he's probably right to become as successful as he is in terms of assets and whatever, but I'm happy responding to every email.
Yeah.
And
Right.
so there's different strokes for different folks, but
Sure.
I respect him to no end, and he's,
Mhm.
by any measure, he's far more successful than I am in terms of, you know, um, um, you know, his net value for sure. But I've got a lot of value that's not in dollars, and he does too. I'm not
Mm.
saying I'm better than him or anything like that, or I'm worse than him, but there's different ways to measure it,
Yeah.
and so as far as what's lighting me up now
The life
is
you don't want to retire
What's that?
The life you don't want to retire from.
Yeah, no,
what's
and I definitely don't. I mean, I want to continue to retire from things I don't like to do.
Mhm.
I want to continue to retire from things I don't do well, and I want to continue to retire from people I don't want to hang around with anymore. So
Perfect.
that's what I retire from. But I'm not. I'm working full time, whatever full time is for me.
Yeah.
And I think I want to continue my Titans Accelerator group. I want to make it better and bigger, and not just bigger in size, but get even different speakers, some well known, some not so well known. I love the people like getting Johan was like a different. I mean, people in my group don't know who he is.
Right.
And that alone gets me excited because he's a
Yeah.
brilliant and he's doing great stuff, as you know. And my group doesn't even know who he is. And my group is fantastic copywriters and marketers, and they're going to be blown away. So finding new talent really lights me up. And in
Nice.
fact, and then juxtaposed with that to that, I'm doing a live event, a live in-person event this October, and it's a 11-year anniversary of the Titans of Direct Response, which was an event that I hosted in 2014 before I left Boardroom. And it was a tribute event to Marty Edelston, who had died in 2013. And it was Dan Kennedy was the guy I did the event with, and he labeled it the event of the decade. Now it's the decade of the 2000 teens, um, but and I had, talk about the Watts. I mean, I had Dan Kennedy, I had, Joe Sugarman, who's amazing. He's dead now. I had Perry Marshall, I had Ken McCarthy, I had Jay Abraham, I had Greg Ranker of Guthrie Ranker, the top infomercial. I
Mm.
had Fred Katona, the top radio direct response guy. I had amazing copywriters. Gary Bensavenga, the best living copywriter who had retired, came out of retirement to present there. So I was going to do a 10-year anniversary, but it wasn't a hell yes. And I try to like, I try to practice essentialism, which is a great book, by the way, by McCune. And he has a thing, hell yes or no. And it wasn't a hell yes at 10 years, but at 11, it was a hell yes. And
Nice.
so so that event is now I'm starting to plan it. And the key is as far as the watts I'm going to bring to that event, I want to have some of the OGs, the original gangsters, people who were at the original event. So Jay Abraham's coming, Ken McCarthy's coming, a couple of the copywriters that were there are coming. And then I want to get some NGs, new gangsters. And that's where I'm going to be able to have the mingling. So that seems consistent with where I am in my life and
I love it.
um, my brand. I'm a little intimidated by it. I threw my hat over the fence and said I'm going to do this event, not knowing how I was going to do it or what it was going to be. I did it smaller. The original Titans direct response event was a 350 person event at anywhere from 3,500 to 5,000 per ticket. So it was a big event. This won't be as big. It's probably 80 people max. So that's got me turned on a little bit.
Perfect.
And Titans Accelerator, and also just continuing to learn. I mean, I belong to three masterminds that I pay to be in, and going to those meetings are exciting. And then on a personal front, my daughter is pregnant, and I'm going to be a grandfather
Hey,
uh,
congrats.
this year. Thank you. So that's on the personal front. But yeah, I think that's what you know. I'm trying to stay engaged at a good level, but not at a level where I'm doing stuff that I don't like to do and stuff that I'm not good at.
Amazing. Amazing. Well, thank you so much for taking the time on a Tuesday to come and hang out with us and
It
chat
wouldn't have
through
been on
some
a
amazing
Monday.
things.
It would have been on a Monday or a Friday. I'll tell you that.
I love it. I love it. And thinking the relationship lesson there and playing the long game. Boys and girls, you're hearing Brian Kurtz tell the story. So follow along with Brian, briankurtz.net. There's a ton of free stuff there. You can subscribe to his newsletter, which, as you heard, is going to be writing every single Friday and dropping the blog posts out there as well. Brian is leading the way in terms of relationship capital. And in today's world where we are creating influence so quickly, creating attention so quickly, the message here to understand that relationship long term and to invest in those returns for that future is something that really resonates with me, and I appreciate you sharing it with me, man.
I
We wish you
hope that it was on point though, because I know it's about
definitely
influencers.
love it. I love it. I love it. I think it's
We
amazing.
didn't talk about
Um,
influencers in particular, but
Oh, we did in every single way. In every comment that came out, we talked about
okay.
influences because the words that we're talking about are influence. And I think that's the real message here is that the influencer themselves is somebody that can create attention quickly, but the long game of that relationship and the messages that we're sharing are so important. So, Brian, I'd love for you to pop back on and tell us how you go with that October event. Let us know, the people that came in the room and what lit you up, and how all that came together. It'd be great to hear back from
I
you.
would love that. And also when Johan speaks, maybe I'll do a little we could do a postmortem of that too.
Nice. Yeah, that'd be cool. That'd be great. In the meantime, guys, head on over to briankurtz.net, follow along with the man that has sold more than $1 billion, $39 at a time, the hard way, and some lessons to be learned there. Drop on over to briankurtz.net. And again, Brian, thank you so much for spending the time with us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you all.